husband divorced me to marry my sister 4 years later. He saw my son and turned pale. Mitchell came home early that night. No briefcase, no smile, no routine, just a manila envelope sliding across the counter, stopping next to the carrots I'd been chopping. Let's get a divorce. My knife clattered to the floor. For a second, I thought I'd misheard, but his face flat cold told me I hadn't. Sign this, it's generous. An extra $20 million on top of the contract. The word contract hit like ice water, because that's what our marriage was, 3 years written in black and white. A replacement deal after my sister Blair vanished days before her own wedding. I had been the substitute, hoping devotion could one day turn into love. Mitchell, I whispered, what if I told you I was pregnant? It was desperate, I know. A secret I'd been holding, hoping it might matter. His family valued heir's legacy. Surely a child would change something, but he didn't flinch. I had a vasectomy right after we married. The child can't be mine. The room spun. His words weren't just denial, they were accusation, betrayal. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. When someone doesn't believe you, explanations are useless. He left me there staring at papers that felt more like a death certificate than a contract. I might have stayed on the floor forever if my phone hadn't rung. My mother's voice crackled through, bright with excitement. Darling, guess what? Your sister is back. Blair's on the afternoon flight. You and Mitchell must come for dinner tonight. Blair? The name alone explained everything. The sudden urgency, the generous offer. She was back and the placeholder wife was no longer needed. Something inside me hardened. 7 years of silent devotion curdled into steel. If they wanted me to vanish so Blair could step back into the story, fine. But I wasn't going to bow out quietly. That night, as Mitchell's car pulled into my parents' driveway, I saw her. Still radiant, still the center of gravity, though dimmed around the edges. And him holding the umbrella over her, letting the rain soak his own suit while she stayed perfectly dry. The old sting rose in my chest. I swallowed it and slipped my hand through his arm, smiling sweetly for my family. Honey, your clothes are wet. You'll catch a cold. Let's get you changed. His jaw tightened, his eyes burning. But in front of them, he had to play the part. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging. I was daring him. And that I realized was power. At dinner that night, I played a role I knew too well. The dutiful wife, the quiet background figure. Except this time, I wasn't aiming to please. I was aiming to unsettle. The table was crowded with dishes my mother had fussed over, all Blair's favorites. The glow in her eyes as she fussed over my sister burned into me. You'd think Blair had returned from war, not from a failed love affair. Mitchell sat beside me, stiff jaw locked. Blair sat across her hand, resting lightly near his, as though testing invisible boundaries. Honey, I said sweetly, reaching across to place fish on Mitchell's plate. You should eat more protein. You've lost weight. He flinched. His hand tightened on his fork and a muscle ticked in his cheek. Blair's lips pressed into a thin line. Perfect. Every time I called him honey, every little wifely act of care was a needle under their skin. For years, I had starved for scraps of affection. Now I wielded my role like a weapon. Blair excused herself halfway through the meal. My mother followed her with worried eyes, then turned on me. Audrey, she hissed, your sister's fragile right now. Stop flaunting. Don't upset her. I almost laughed. Fragile Blair, the family jewel, could break hearts and promises without consequence. I had been the spare part slotted in to protect reputations. And now, even in my own marriage, my mother wanted me to step aside for her. I forced tears into my eyes, lowering my voice. Mom, I need Mitchell. I'm pregnant. Shouldn't he take care of me? The words were a match to dry tinder. A glass shattered on the stairs. Blair stood frozen shards glittering at her feet, her face pale with shock. Before anyone could react, Mitchell bolted up, grabbing my hand and dragging me from the house. His grip was tight, his stride furious. I let him pull me into the night, my heart pounding with something dangerously close to exhilaration. Back at our home, silence pressed in. Then he turned on me, eyes blazing. What game are you playing? I tilted my head, feigning innocence. I told the truth. I am pregnant. You think this stunt will make me stay? His voice was low, sharp. I smiled faintly. Mitchell, are you so sure? Maybe your little vasectomy wasn't as effective as you thought. His face darkened, rage and disbelief warring across his features. For 3 years, I had been soft, compliant, careful. This version of me, defiant, sharp, unyielding, was new to him. It terrified him, and that gave me power. The next morning, I did something unthinkable to the old Audrey I slept in. No perfectly timed coffee, no breakfast tray. I came downstairs at 8, hair loose, robe untied. Mitchell was already dressed, glaring at his empty cup. I'm hungry, I said cheerfully, picking up my phone. I'll order takeout. His silence was thunderous. When the food arrived, I set my plate on the table and ate slowly, savoring every bite. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled. By noon, his assistant called me in a panic. Mrs. Mitchell, he hasn't eaten all day. The cafeteria food, he won't touch it. He needs your cooking. For years, I had catered to every whim. My recipes had become his weakness. Now it was my weapon. Don't worry, I said sweetly. When he's hungry enough, he'll eat. And I hung up. That night, my phone buzzed. A picture message. Blair had sent it by mistake. Mitchell sitting across from her at a hot pot restaurant, steam rising, his face drawn. She quickly deleted it, replacing it with a flimsy excuse. Sorry, wrong send. But I saw enough. Mitchell hated spicy food. It wrecked his stomach, yet there he was, enduring it for her. My lips curved into a cold smile. By dawn, his assistant's frantic text confirmed that Mitchell had been hospitalized. I didn't rush. I made myself breakfast first. Porridge, warm and soothing. After I ate, I packed the leftovers into a thermos and drove to the hospital. In his VIP room, he looked pale, furious, expectant. When he saw it was me, not Blair, his expression soured. His assistant gushed at the sight of the thermos. "Mrs. Mitchell, he's been waiting for you. You're such a blessing." I set it down. It's just leftovers. I didn't want to waste them. Mitchell's face twisted in humiliation. My heart felt light for the first time in years. As I left the room, I caught sight of a man leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Tall, handsome, with a lazy smile that carried both arrogance and charm. Sterling Mitchell's rival. He straightened, his eyes glinting. Audrey making him that mad, it feels good, doesn't it? I froze. The way he said my name, like he knew me, unsettled me. "Stop calling me like we're old friends," I snapped. It's disgusting. But he only smiled, wider eyes, dark with some emotion I couldn't name. There's the fire I remember. I brushed past him, heart pounding, pretending his words didn't rattle me. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about Mitchell and Blair anymore. The stage was more crowded than I thought. And I wasn't going to play the obedient stand-in wife any longer. I used to think silence kept me safe. If I smiled, obeyed, stayed small enough, maybe I'd be tolerated. Maybe I'd even be loved. But after that night at the hospital, something shifted. The mask I'd worn for years cracked, and the pieces didn't fit anymore. Mitchell was avoiding me at home. He stayed late at the office, left before dawn, barely spoke when he had to. I could feel the tension buzzing off him like static. He thought if he starved me of attention, I'd crumble, beg for scraps again. But I didn't. I let him stew. I let him walk into an empty kitchen every morning. No carefully measured coffee, no porridge designed for his fragile stomach. I slept late. I ordered food just for myself. The more I ignored him, the more restless he became. 3 days later, my phone rang. My mother. "Audrey, come home. We need to talk." Her tone wasn't a request. When I walked into my parents' living room, it was like stepping into a courtroom. My father sat stiffly in his armchair. My mother perched on the sofa, lips pressed thin. And Blair lounged like she owned the place, hair shining, expression composed. "Sit," my mother said. I sat. She started gently, too gently. "Darling, you've worked hard these years. We know Mitchell hasn't treated you as he should." Her words almost made me laugh. So she did know. She'd always known. Every fever I'd fought alone, every lonely holiday spent keeping Mitchell's routines, every time she saw me fade a little more, she had known. And still she had offered me up like a replacement part for Blair's broken engagement. Maybe she continued, "It's time you think about your future, about letting go." Blair's voice cut in smooth as silk. "Audrey, why torture yourselves? Mitchell never liked you. Everyone can see it." She tilted her head, eyes sharp. "Why not divorce and move on?" I looked at her, and in her silence, I saw the truth she wanted him. She always had. "Move on?" I echoed, my voice flat. "So you can move in." Her cheeks flushed. She didn't deny it. My father shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't intervene. My mother's expression hardened, all pretense gone. "Blair's right. Divorce Mitchell. Stop clinging to something that isn't yours." That was the moment something inside me iced over. They weren't even pretending to care about me anymore. I let my hand rest on my belly, my voice calm. "And my child, what happens to them in your neat little plan?" Blair's composure cracked. "Stop pretending that baby isn't Mitchell's. He was merciful not to expose you, and you're still using it as leverage." Her words were sharp, but I heard the desperation underneath. She was running out of patience. She wanted me gone. I leaned back, studying her, then spoke softly. "5 million. She blinked. "What? Give me 5 million, and I'll sign the divorce papers?" I said, steady and deliberate. Blair's eyes widened. My parents' mouths fell open. For once, I had turned the script around. 5 million is nothing to you, I added. You want Mitchell pay for him. Think of it as a dowry, you're covering yourself. Silence stretched. Finally, Blair gritted her teeth. "Fine, call him. Let's get this over with." She dialed, and Mitchell arrived faster than I expected. Almost like he'd been waiting around the corner. His eyes locked on me, furious. "Where are the divorce papers?" I asked plainly. His jaw clenched. "You're in such a hurry to run off with Sterling." Sterling. Of course he'd noticed, his rival circling me like a hawk. That had to sting his pride more than losing me. "Yeah," I said, not missing a beat. "I can't wait. And neither can the baby. Let's finish this." Blair stepped closer, touching his arm like she had the right. "Mitchell, since Audrey insists, just go through with it." For a long moment, I thought he'd refuse. Then he called his secretary and a new divorce agreement was sent over. The room held its breath as I signed. My handwriting was calm, firm. I slid the papers across to him and lifted my chin. "Mitchell, remember this? I'm the one who doesn't want you anymore. And don't forget to have your lawyer transfer the breakup fee to my account." I walked out head high, leaving their stunned faces behind me. On the street, the cold air hit my skin, sharp and cleansing. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but instead, there was a hollow ache in my chest. I hadn't just lost a husband. I had lost the illusion of family too. Maybe I'd never had one. As I wandered aimlessly, a sleek black Maybach pulled up in front of me. The door opened, and a long leg stepped out. Sterling. He leaned casually against the car, his smile infuriatingly charming. "Divorced?" he asked, eyes glittering. I glared. "How did you know so fast?" Blair told me, he said, simply, like it was obvious. "Audrey, now nothing stands between us." I scoffed, stepping around him. You're insane. I'm pregnant. Do you want to play stepdad? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Mitchell's kid, calling me dad, honestly, that sounds pretty satisfying. The man was impossible. And yet, as he trailed after me, rattling off ridiculous reasons why we should be together, I realized something strange. For the first time in years. I wasn't weighed down by despair. His nonsense chatter lightened the hollow space inside me. Maybe I wasn't alone anymore. Not completely. I packed my life into cardboard boxes, the kind you can carry alone without help, because I had no one to help me. The city where I'd spent more than 20 years suddenly felt like a cage. I needed a fresh start somewhere my sister's shadow couldn't reach, somewhere Mitchell's cold gaze couldn't follow. I moved thousands of miles away to a small town where the air smelled of pine and wet soil instead of car exhaust and perfume counters. The streets were quiet. The people polite but distant, perfect for disappearing. I bought a modest little house online, sight unseen, and when I unlocked the door for the first time, I almost cried. Not because it was beautiful, it wasn't. The walls needed paint, the kitchen tiles were cracked, the floorboards squeaked. But it was mine and my child's. For the first time in years, I slept without the dread of footsteps in the hallway, without the weight of a family dinner waiting to trap me. I even opened a flower shop on Main Street. Small, sunlit, with a bell that chimed every time a customer walked in. The smell of fresh blooms filled the air, masking the ache in my chest. Arranging lilies, tulips, and roses gave me something to hold on to. Something alive. But peace never lasts. The first time I saw him, I thought my mind was playing tricks. Sterling Mitchell's arrogant rival was standing by the baggage claim at the airport when I arrived. He smiled like fate had just delivered me to him. What a coincidence, he said, too casual. You didn't follow me, did you? I snapped. He laughed. That's what I was about to ask you. I ignored him, brushed past, and told myself it was impossible. But then, the very next morning, as I was about to unlock my new house, the door across the street opened, and there he was again. Sterling leaned against the frame, eyes wide with exaggerated shock. Audrey, you bought the house opposite mine. Still claiming you're not stalking me? My blood boiled. Don't flatter yourself. I slammed my door hard enough to rattle the windows. But he didn't leave. Every day, he showed up at my flower shop. At first, he bought extravagant bouquets, 99 roses, orchids that cost more than my rent. He always handed them back to me after paying. For you, he'd say, as if he hadn't just bought them from my counter. I told him to stop. He didn't. Soon, he didn't even bother pretending. He'd sit in the corner, sipping coffee from the cafe next door, chatting with customers, complimenting my arrangements like he owned the place. I hated how quickly the townspeople started liking him. Sterling was polished, charming, good at pretending to care. They didn't know what I knew, that he was Mitchell's shadow, a man who thrived on rivalry, on taking whatever Mitchell had. But here's the part I didn't want to admit, even to myself. Sometimes his ridiculous persistence made the silence less unbearable. When he teased me, when he left with a smug grin, I caught myself smiling afterward. Then came the accident. One afternoon, a delivery truck pulled up with fresh flowers. I was outside helping the driver unload when I heard the screech of tires. A car veered out of control, heading straight for me. For a moment, I froze. The world narrowed to the blur of metal and sound. Then a body slammed into mine, shoving me to the ground. My palms scraped the pavement, the sting sharp, but I was alive. When I looked up, Sterling was lying a few feet away. His glasses were gone. His expensive suit ripped, his hair a mess. He looked fragile in a way I'd never seen. Sterling. I scrambled to him, my voice trembling. Get up. Are you hurt? He tried to smirk. I'm not as clumsy as you. A little car can't hurt me. But when he sat up, his face twisted in pain. Okay, he gasped. Maybe my leg's broken. Panic clawed up my throat. I called an ambulance, my hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. As we waited, I noticed his leg bent at an unnatural angle. My chest tightened, tears spilling before I could stop them. Hey, he said softly, his voice different now, gentle, almost bewildered. Why are you crying? Audrey, don't cry. I'm okay. I shook my head, sobbing. If you move, I'll cry harder. He stilled instantly. Then I'll stay put. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed it. A clean break surgery required months of recovery. Not life-threatening, but serious. I stayed through the surgery. I hired a nurse. I visited every day. Somewhere along the way, without realizing it, I slipped back into routines I thought I'd left behind. Cooking simple meals, bringing them in thermoses, scolding him when he complained too much. Sterling, once so infuriatingly cocky, lay in bed like a fragile patient. Audrey, I want some water. Audrey, my shoulders hurt. Massage them. He even pouted when I refused. I wanted to roll my eyes to tell him to stop being dramatic. But when I saw his leg in a cast, when I remembered the sound of tires and the feeling of his arms shoving me to safety, the words stuck in my throat. He had saved me, and I couldn't ignore that. For the first time since I left Mitchell, I wasn't alone in my new life. But part of me wondered, was this freedom or just another set of chains I didn't yet understand? Sterling had turned the hospital room into a stage. Every time I arrived, he performed his part with dramatic flair, groaning like he was on death's door. If I was late, with his porridge pouting, if I forgot to fluff his pillows. I told myself I was only humoring him out of guilt. After all, he'd saved my life. But the truth was more complicated. His antics softened the silence that had hung over me for years. Then one afternoon, as I set down a tray of soup, The door burst open so hard it slammed against the wall. Mitchell. He looked thinner, his sharp suit hanging awkwardly on his frame, as if the fabric itself no longer recognized the man inside. His eyes found me instantly narrowing, with an intensity that made my stomach drop. Before I could speak, he crossed the room and grabbed my arm, yanking me toward the door. Mitchell Sterling barked from the bed, his voice rough with rage. "Take your filthy hands off my girlfriend or I'll fight you right here. Girlfriend." The word cracked through the room like thunder. I twisted free from Mitchell's grip before things escalated. "Stay in bed, Sterling. Don't you dare move," I snapped, surprising even myself. He froze, obeying like a scolded child, though his glare never left Mitchell. Mitchell dragged me into the hallway, his grip still iron. The door closed behind us, muffling Sterling's indignant protests. "Are you insane?" I hissed, pulling my arm back. "What do you think you're doing?" His voice was low, hoarse, like it had been scraped raw. "Audrey. I didn't marry Blair." For a second, I just blinked at him. "And you want me to congratulate you?" He flinched. The Mitchell I knew, cold, composed, untouchable, never flinched. But now he did. "I made a mistake," he said. "Losing you made me see it. I love you." The words seemed to burn his mouth as they came out. "Come back to me." I stared at him, trying to see the man who once slid divorce papers across our kitchen counter like they were a business contract. The man who dismissed my pregnancy, who let my family treat me like a placeholder. "Love," I repeated, almost laughing. "When I was sick, you told me you had to work overtime. When I begged for warmth, you gave me a contract. And when I said I was pregnant, you accused me of betrayal. That isn't love, Mitchell. That's convenience." His jaw clenched. "Don't trust Sterling," he said, quickly desperate now. "He doesn't care about you. He just wants to compete with me. That's all this is." "Funny," I shot back. "When a car almost killed me, Sterling didn't hesitate. He threw himself in front of it. Tell me, Mitchell, would you have done the same?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His silence was louder than any answer. I turned ready to walk back into Sterling's room when his voice followed me, cracked and broken. "Don't say it's too late." I didn't look back. It's too late. Inside, Sterling was waiting like a patient child. His pout disappeared the second he saw my face replaced with a grin. "Did you finally dump him properly?" "Good. Now feed me. My leg hurts." I almost rolled my eyes, but the relief in my chest was undeniable. For the first time, Mitchell was on the outside, and I intended to keep it that way. The call started 2 days later. First from Mitchell's secretary, "He's sick. He needs you." Then from his friend, "He's been drinking. Come pick him up." Finally, from an unfamiliar number, "Audrey, please. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I need you." Before I would have dropped everything. I would have rushed across the city holding him up while he stumbled, spoon-feeding him porridge like a child. Now I hung up. I blocked each number. Sterling noticed, of course. He noticed everything. One evening, as I tidied up his room, he leaned back against his pillows and asked quietly, "Do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Choosing to leave him behind." I paused, staring at the window where the city lights blinked faintly in the distance. "No," I said finally. "I regret waiting so long." Sterling studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled, genuine this time, no theatrics. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." I scoffed, trying to cover the sudden warmth that bloomed in my chest. "You can't even walk, Sterling." He winked. "Then I'll crawl." For the first time in years, I laughed without bitterness. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Mitchell wasn't the kind of man who let go. And if he couldn't have me, he'd find a way to ruin the life I was trying to build. The past wasn't finished with me. Not yet. The phone call came on a gray morning, the kind of sky that presses down on you like a weight. It was my mother. Her voice sounded unusually soft, almost careful. "Audrey, come home. We need to talk. Your father and I. We just want what's best for you." Her words felt rehearsed, polished smooth, like stones in a river. Still something in me. A stubborn daughter's hope maybe made me go. When I walked into the living room, the air was thick like a courtroom before the verdict. My parents sat stiffly on the sofa. Blair lounged nearby, arms folded, her gaze sharp and gleaming. "Audrey." My mother began sighing, like she carried the weight of the world. "We've seen how Mitchell treats you. It isn't right. You've suffered enough. Maybe it's time you think about divorce." The way she said divorce was delicate, like she was doing me a favor. My chest tightened. "So you knew?" I asked quietly. "You knew how he treated me all these years." My mother faltered, but didn't deny it. My father's eyes slid away, ashamed, or maybe just uninterested. And then Blair spoke, her voice smooth as silk. "She's right, Audrey. Why torture yourself? He never loved you. We all know who he wanted." The words hung heavy, unmistakable. I turned to her, my voice steady even as my hands shook. "So you mean you want me to step aside so you can have him?" Her silence was my answer. The room tilted. My parents' faces were masks of false sympathy, but their eyes betrayed them. They weren't worried about me. They were already calculating how neatly Mitchell and Blair would fit back into their lives, into their legacy. For years, I had excused their favoritism. The way they rushed Blair to the hospital for a minor bump while ignoring my fevers. The way they praised her for every small achievement and treated mine as accidents. I thought they just didn't notice. But now I saw it clearly. They noticed. They just didn't care. I placed a protective hand on my stomach. "And what about my child?" I asked. My voice cracked on the word, but I held my mother's eyes. Blair scoffed, her mask slipping. "Stop pretending. That child isn't Mitchell's. He was merciful not to call you out. Don't push your luck." There it was, the venom she'd kept tucked behind her perfect smile. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Then suddenly, a strange calm washed over me. My life had already been dismantled piece by piece. What more could they take? I leaned back, staring at Blair with a smile so cold it surprised even me. $5 million, I whispered. Her eyes widened. What $5 million? You give me that, and I'll sign the divorce papers. You'll get Mitchell. You'll get your happily ever after. And I'll disappear. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked stunned, but Blair's expression shifted from shock to fury to reluctant calculation. Money was nothing to her. She had always been showered with it. But to me, it was survival. It was security for my child. It was freedom. Her jaw clenched. Fine, she spat. Call him. Let's end this. Minutes later, Mitchell arrived, tension radiating off him like heat. His eyes darted between us, confusion giving way to anger. Where are the divorce papers? I asked, meeting his gaze head on. His lips pressed into a thin line. Why are you in such a hurry? Is it because of Sterling? I didn't flinch. Yes, I said simply. I can't wait anymore. And neither can my child. The way his face tightened told me everything. For weeks he had stalled, hidden the papers, let his pride keep me tethered to him even as he clung to Blair in the shadows. He hadn't expected me to turn the game on its head. Blair stepped closer, her voice sharp. Mitchell, stop being stubborn. Do it. Reluctantly, he called his secretary. Soon, a new agreement was delivered, its pages crisp, its ink still fresh. I picked up the pen, my hand steady this time. My name stretched cleanly across the line, bold and final. I slid the papers toward him. Mitchell, I said quietly, remember this. I'm not the one being left. I'm the one who doesn't want you anymore. His eyes burned, but he signed. I stood clutching the pen like a weapon and looked at Blair one last time. Make sure the money's in my account by tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll remind Mitchell that his grand love story had a price tag. Then I walked out. The air outside was sharp, almost painful in my lungs. I should have felt free. Instead, there was a hollow ache where my family used to be. Maybe there had never been a family at all, just an audience waiting for Blair's spotlight to return. Still, one truth cut through the emptiness. I had survived. And now for the first time, the script was mine to write. I left the house with nothing but a pen in my hand and a number in my head, 5 million. Enough to build a new life, enough to make sure my child would never beg. The transfer came the next morning. Blair didn't even hesitate. She wanted me gone fast like scraping mud off her designer shoes. Seeing the balance hit my account felt surreal. For once, I had leverage, not scraps. I packed my life into boxes and walked away from the city that had chewed me up. A small town, a small house, a flower shop I could call my own. That was the dream. Somewhere quiet, somewhere my baby and I could breathe. But freedom wasn't soft. It was sharp and lonely. I'd spent so long defining myself against Mitchell and Blair that the silence of my new apartment felt like a punishment. At night, I caught myself listening for his footsteps, for the cold baritone of his voice, telling me what I'd done wrong. When I realized it was gone forever, I felt relief tangled with grief. I told myself grief was just a habit, and habits can be broken. On my second day in the new town, as I was hauling a crate of fresh lilies into the shop, I heard a familiar drawl behind me. Need a hand? Audrey Sterling leaned against the doorframe like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. Perfect suit, crooked smile, the kind of man who thrived on other people's chaos. I dropped the crate harder than I meant to. You followed me. He held up his hands in mock defense. What can I say? Fate keeps putting us in the same place. Maybe you should stop running from me. I narrowed my eyes. Or maybe you should stop stalking me. His grin widened. If I were stalking, would I really be this obvious? Come on, Audrey, admit it. It makes you feel better seeing me here. I wanted to deny it, to push him out into the street. But the truth, his ridiculous persistence, his ability to needle Mitchell without even trying, that part of me enjoyed it. Not because I wanted him, but because he reminded me I wasn't invisible anymore. He bought 99 roses from me that day, then left them sitting in the shop. For you, he said casually, like spending thousands on flowers was pocket change. By the end of the week, he was showing up every morning buying something. Sometimes roses, sometimes daisies, always leaving them behind. My shop looked more like a shrine than a business. I told myself he was just playing another game, another round in his endless war with Mitchell. But then, he did something that shook me. It was late after closing. I'd stay behind to balance the book's exhaustion pulling at my bones. As I locked up, a car came out of nowhere, swerving too fast on the narrow street. I froze. The headlights bore down, blinding, merciless. A hand grabbed me, shoving me hard to the pavement. I skidded, palms burning, but alive. When I looked up, Sterling was on the ground a few feet away, his glasses broken, his suit ripped, his face twisted with pain. He'd taken the hit for me. Sterling. My voice cracked as I crawled to him. He tried to smirk, but it came out as a grimace. I'm not as clumsy as you, just a little dented. Blood seeped through his trousers and panic surged in my chest. I screamed for an ambulance, my hands trembling as I pressed against his leg to stop the bleeding. For all his games, for all his arrogance in that moment, he looked fragile, human. And something inside me softened in a way I didn't want to admit. At the hospital, as the doctors wheeled him away, he reached for me. His fingers brushed mine, weak but deliberate. Don't cry, he whispered. I'll be fine. You've got enough scars, you don't need one more. His words haunted me that night. I hated him for making me care. I hated myself for letting the wall crack. The next morning, I found myself at his bedside with a thermos of porridge. He grinned when he saw me milking his injury for all it was worth. Audrey, my shoulders ache. Massage them. I rolled my eyes, but I stayed. And for the first time in years, I laughed, really laughed, as he whined like a spoiled child. But freedom had its price. Because just as I was starting to feel steady, a shadow returned. That evening, as I left the hospital, a black car pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and Mitchell's voice, hoarse, desperate, cut through the night. "Audrey," he said, "get in. We need to talk." The sight of him stole my breath. He looked thinner, older, like the weight of losing control had finally landed on him. But I didn't move. My hand curled protectively over my stomach, over the life growing inside me. Mitchell's jaw clenched. His eyes, once cold, now stormy, searched mine. "Don't walk away. Not yet." And for the first time, I realized the story wasn't finished. Not even close. The moment I heard his voice, I felt my stomach twist, not with longing, but with the old instinct to brace for impact. Mitchell had always carried storms in his eyes, but now there was something else, desperation. "Audrey," he said again, softer this time, like saying my name could rewind everything. "Please, just get in the car." I didn't move. My hand stayed on my stomach, steady as a shield. "We're divorced, Mitchell. Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." His jaw clenched. He hated being refused. For 3 years, I'd bend around his moods like a reed in the wind. Now standing on the hospital steps, I felt rooted solid. Mitchell leaned forward, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. "It was never supposed to be Blair," he muttered, as if confessing to himself. "She was a mistake. You," his voice cracked and he stopped swallowing hard. I almost laughed. Now, he wanted to rewrite history. After throwing me away like a contract that had expired. After treating me like a maid who slept in his bed. "You made your choice," I said flatly. "You chased her. You both made it very clear where I stood." Mitchell's eyes snapped to mine, fierce. "And you what ran to Sterling? You think he's your savior? He doesn't love you, Audrey. He only wants you because you're mine?" The old Mitchell was back, proud, territorial, furious that his toy had slipped from his grasp. But something in his tone, ragged, uneven, hinted at a fracture. For once, he didn't sound certain of himself. I stepped closer, just enough for him to hear the ice in my voice. "When I was sick, you worked late. When I cried, you told me to stop being dramatic. When I carried your child inside me, you accused me of lying. Sterling may be reckless, infuriating, but he didn't hesitate to take a car from me. Tell me, Mitchell, when was the last time you risked anything for me?" The silence stretched thick with all the answers he couldn't give. His lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, he broke. "Don't do this," he said, his voice raw. "Don't shut me out." He stopped himself, like the words were too heavy to carry. I should have walked away right then, but years of conditioning don't vanish overnight. A small part of me, the broken, hopeful girl I used to be, wanted to hear him say it. To hear the word love cross his lips without resentment attached. Instead, he said, "You'll regret choosing him." The spell snapped. I exhaled sharply, almost relieved. There it was, the Mitchell I knew. The man who never begged, never admitted fault, only threatened with regret. I stepped back. Then let me regret it in peace. I turned to leave, but his hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not harsh, but desperate. "Audrey, let go," I hissed. And then a voice cut through the night, low and dangerous. She said, "Let go." Sterling. He stood by the hospital entrance, still pale from his injuries, but somehow managing to look like he owned the night. His gaze locked on Mitchell, and the tension between them crackled like live wires. Mitchell straightened his hand, slipping from mine. "Of course. Sterling to the rescue. You don't even realize, Audrey, you're just another pawn in his game." Sterling smirked, but his eyes were steel. "Maybe, but at least I don't discard pawns when I get bored." Mitchell's face darkened, and for a second I thought he'd lunge. But then he looked at me, really looked, and I saw something that unsettled me. Fear, not of Sterling. Of losing me. "I'll be back," he said, finally, his voice low. A promise or a threat, I couldn't tell. Then he drove off, taillights bleeding into the night. The silence he left behind was deafening. Sterling walked over, his usual arrogance, tempered with something softer. "You okay?" I nodded, though my pulse betrayed me. "You don't have to face him alone anymore," Sterling said quietly. "Not unless you want to." I wanted to scoff, to push him away with sarcasm, but the truth was, I needed to hear it. Because Mitchell's return wasn't just about him. It was about everything I'd fought to escape. The life of contracts, comparisons, and quiet suffering. And I wasn't about to let that life reclaim me. Still, as I lay in bed that night, one thought gnawed at me. Mitchell wasn't the type to give up. If he'd driven all this way, tracked me down, and dared to speak those words, he wasn't finished. And when Mitchell wanted something, he would burn the whole world to get it back. For a week, the town felt different, quieter, but not safe. Mitchell's sudden reappearance hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Every time the shop bell rang, I half expected him to walk in his presence, overwhelming every corner of my new life. But instead, it was Sterling, always Sterling. He'd show up with his crooked grin, sometimes with roses, sometimes with coffee he'd claim was definitely decaf, even when it wasn't. He filled the silence with his shameless chatter, trying too hard to make me laugh. And sometimes I hated how well it worked. But I also hated how at night, when the laughter faded, I found myself staring at the ceiling, hearing Mitchell's voice echoing in my mind, "You'll regret choosing him." One evening, I was closing the shop when Sterling leaned against the counter, watching me sweep. "You're quiet tonight," he said, his tone unusually careful. Thinking about him? I froze. He didn't have to say who. "Don't flatter yourself," I muttered, but my voice lacked bite. Sterling tilted his head, studying me. "He's not done. You know that, right? Men like Mitchell don't walk away. They circle. They wait." And when they come back, he trailed off, his smile fading. They bite harder. I gripped the broom handle until my knuckles ached. Then maybe it's time I bit back. Sterling's eyes lit with something admiration maybe, but before he could answer, the bell above the door jingled. And there he was, Mitchell. The air thickened instantly, the room shrinking around him. He looked different, hollowed out, his sharp suit hanging a little looser, his eyes bloodshot. But his presence? It was still dangerous. Closing time, I said flatly, my heart pounding. I'm not here for flowers, he replied, his voice low. His gaze flicked to Sterling, and the corner of his lip curled. Of course, always here, aren't you? Sterling straightened, his easy demeanor hardening. Unlike some people, I don't abandon her. Mitchell ignored him. His eyes stayed on me, burning. Audrey, I need to talk to you, alone. Sterling barked a laugh. Yeah, not happening? The tension snapped like a wire. Mitchell stepped forward. Sterling moved closer, and suddenly I was between them, the broom clattering to the floor. Enough. My voice cut through the air, sharp, trembling. Do you hear yourselves? I'm not a prize to be fought over. I'm not a trophy for either of you to win. Silence. Both men froze, staring at me. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Mitchell, whatever you think you feel, it's too late. You had me, and you treated me like I was disposable. You don't get to come back now because your pride is wounded. His jaw clenched, but I didn't stop. And Sterling? I turned to him, my chest tight. You think you can joke and charm your way into my life. But I'm not a toy for your rivalry. If you're here because it's fun to steal what Mitchell wants, then leave. I won't be used again. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Sterling's face shifted, his grin gone. Audrey, he said softly, and for once there was no mocking lilt. I'm here because I can't walk away. Not from you. Not anymore. Mitchell's hand curled into a fist. And what about me? He demanded, his voice breaking. Do you really think I didn't feel anything? I was a fool, Audrey. I thought love was weakness and I hated myself for wanting you. But when you left, his breath hitched. I realized I couldn't breathe without you. The words I had longed for years to hear. But instead of filling me with joy, they filled me with exhaustion, because they had come too late. I shook my head slowly. Mitchell, you didn't lose me to Sterling. You lost me to yourself, to your own choices. That's something you'll have to live with. His face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw not the cold man I had married, but the broken boy underneath, the one who never knew how to love without control. But pity is not love, and I had run out of second chances to give. Sterling stepped closer, tentative now, like he understood this wasn't his victory. Audrey, he murmured, what do you want? I looked at both of them, the man who had shattered me, the man who had amused me, and myself, the woman who had survived them both. What did I want? Not a man's love, not a man's approval. Freedom. I want to build a life where my worth isn't measured by either of you, I said, my voice steady. If you can stand beside me without trying to own me, then maybe you have a place in it. If not, then leave. Sterling's eyes softened, almost reverent. Mitchell's hardened grief etched deep in every line. Neither spoke. I walked past them, both locking the door behind me, leaving the flowers, the fights, and the past in the shop's dark silence. That night, as I lay in bed, one truth settled deep in my bones. Whatever storm was coming, I wasn't the same fragile girl anymore. And if either man tried to drag me back into their old games, they would find themselves facing someone who had learned how to play to win. I thought leaving both men in the shop that night would end things. I thought silence would protect me. But silence has a way of pulling people in, making them desperate to fill it. The next morning, a knock rattled my door. Not the soft, playful tap I'd come to expect from Sterling. This one was sharp, urgent. I opened it to find him standing there, hair disheveled, tie, crooked, his usual cocky air, nowhere in sight. Audrey, he said, his voice raw. I need to know. If it's not me, say so. I'll walk away, but don't leave me hanging in between. I stared at him, surprised. Sterling, who always hid behind jokes and smirks, was laying himself bare. And for the first time, I realized how exhausting it must be to play the clown when what you wanted was deadly serious. Before I could answer, another voice came from behind him. Don't believe a word he says. Mitchell. He stepped forward from the shadows, immaculate as ever in his suit, but his eyes betrayed sleepless nights. He looked older, worn down, yet still terrifyingly stubborn. Sterling doesn't love you, Mitchell said coldly. He just loves beating me. Once he wins, he'll toss you aside. Sterling spun, his temper sparking. You think everyone is like you, Mitchell? Not everything is a transaction. Some of us actually care. Care? Mitchell's laugh was bitter. You've spent your whole life chasing what I have. Audrey is just another trophy to you. Then why Sterling shot back when you had her, did you treat her like nothing? Their words were daggers flying back and forth, but I had stopped listening. My heart was pounding for another reason, because I realized something. It wasn't about choosing between them. It never had been. It was about choosing myself. I stepped forward, my voice cutting through their shouting. Enough. Both men froze. I'm not property. I'm not a prize. I'm not a placeholder in your rivalry. I am Audrey. My voice trembled, but I held steady. And I'm done letting either of you decide my fate. Mitchell's lips parted, the words caught in his throat. Sterling's bravado slipped, leaving something raw. I continued, each word heavy with finality. Mitchell, you taught me how cruel love can feel when it's bound by pride. Sterling, you showed me how intoxicating it feels to be seen. But jokes aren't a foundation for trust. If either of you truly want to be in my life, then prove it by letting me go. By letting me stand on my own first. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then shockingly, Mitchell stepped back. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. If that's what you want, I'll go. And just like that, he turned. The man who once dictated every detail of my life walked away without another word. Sterling looked at me, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. His eyes were darker than usual, searching. You really don't need me, do you? I took a breath. Need, no. Want, maybe. But not on your terms. On mine. Something shifted in his expression. For once, he didn't grin, didn't joke. He just nodded. Then I'll wait. No games, no trophies. Just me. And then he too left. The silence that followed was deafening. But for the first time in years, it was mine. That night, I sat in my tiny kitchen, my hands resting on the swell of my belly. The baby shifted, a small kick against my palm. A new life. My life. And I whispered not to Mitchell, not to Sterling, but to myself. We'll be okay. Weeks passed. The shop flourished, filled with laughter and the scent of lilies. I learned to breathe without waiting for footsteps behind me. I laughed more, slept better, dreamed bigger. Sterling still came by, sometimes with flowers, sometimes just to sit quietly. He didn't push, he didn't tease. He just existed beside me like he was learning patience for the first time. And Mitchell, he vanished from my world. A ghost. I didn't know if he had returned to Blair, to his business, or to the bottom of a bottle. And I didn't ask, because his story was no longer mine to carry. The day my son was born, the hospital was filled with soft light. I held him close, tiny fingers gripping mine, and I cried. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found. Family. Not the one I was forced into, not the one that betrayed me. The one I was building one breath, one choice, one heartbeat at a time. And maybe someday when I was ready, there'd be room for someone else in it. But for now, it was enough. More than enough. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't anyone's shadow. I was my own. And this time, the story was mine to write. Thanks so much for staying with me through this story. Every view, like, and comment means more than you know, and helps me keep sharing these real-life journeys of betrayal, heartbreak, and healing. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share your own experiences in the comments. I read every single one, and your voices are what keep these stories alive.